Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Army Facebook Live as we discuss the latest personnel updates as they relate to COVID-19. My name is Hank Minitrez, Public Affairs Officer with the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and also the Army G-1. Our panel today, joining us in the studio, or rather in the large Pentagon Auditorium this afternoon, is the Assistant Secretary of the Army, Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Dr. Casey Wardynski. We also have Mr. Peter Hosutt from the Army's Civilian Human Resources Agency to talk civilian issues. And from the Army G-1's Directorate of Military Personnel Management, the DMPM's Sergeant Major Mark Clarke. Gentlemen, I want to first thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to the general public, to soldiers, to families about the very latest in issues, policies, and procedures that affect them as we continue to roll on through COVID-19 and our efforts through the U.S. Army. So Secretary Wardynski, sir, I'd like to pitch it to you for your opening remarks.
Great, thank you. Well, I'd like to express my appreciation for those at home and at work joining us today to hear an update on all things people with regard to the Army and our adjustments we're making in this environment of COVID-19. First thing to keep in mind throughout is safety of our force, our soldiers, our civilians, their families is always number one in our minds. And so the policies that are evolving, the policies that were in place that we've reviewed, we took an eye towards safety and looking at all of that and in making the adjustments we've made. As I go around and talk with folks in this environment, whether they're civilians or active duty folks, I get a lot of questions about recruiting and how does an Army recruit a volunteer Army when everybody's locked down, when schools are closed and so forth. And I can tell you fortuitously, a lot of the innovations the Army already had on way are helping us terrifically right now. Recruiters are operating in a virtual world. General Funk and his team and General Muth down at TRADOC had already begun doing virtual recruiting a good time ago. And so they've leveraged that expertise to reach out to young folks who no longer you'll find in a school because school is closed, but they can find them online. They find them through gaming venues, and they have discussions about joining the Army. And those discussions are going very well. At the beginning of the year, we were looking at about an Army of 485,000 soldiers, and we call that end strength, and that's the strength at the end of the year on September 30th. And we're on track to hit that number. So we were very concerned originally, but thanks to the innovations going on at TRADOC and Recruiting Command and elsewhere in the Army, we're able to bring young folks in. We do a lot of screening along the way through the MEP stations in the recruiting situations to make sure folks are healthy, and we screen them for onward shipment to training. We've decreased the shipment to training a good bit so that we can space people out more and get the distancing we're looking for. We get them to training, we onboard them there and make sure everybody's still healthy, put them in a controlled environment for a while, and then we begin the training. And so that's underway and been underway for a while, and we're looking to increase the pace of that in the coming months. But given all that, we're on track to hit our end strength target of 485. And that's thanks to great work at TRADOC and Recruiting Command in training and onboarding new folks. And it's great work throughout the Army and at Army G1 with regard to retaining folks. Retention is very strong this year. It's about 15% higher than we had anticipated at the beginning of the year. And we've taken a lot of steps and a great many innovations in Army G1 and the personnel channels to make that possible. So for soldiers who were close to ETS within about 6 months, we've made some innovations there so they can stay in the Army on short notice, maybe 3 to 11 more months. We've done things to help make it possible for soldiers to manage the cost of COVID-19. They may have been delayed in movement. They may be in isolation at a new station. So we brought policies on board to take care of that as well. So a great many things going on with regard to sustaining the Army, sustaining readiness. So while we're worried about the safety and taking care of the safety of our folks, we also have to worry about the safety of our country. And we don't want any adversaries thinking this would be a great time to take advantage of the situation. And our forces out there in the Pacific, the Atlantic, Europe are doing very well as well, and they're sustaining their readiness so that nobody needs to get a stray thought in their mind about trying the United States out. We've got Soldiers for Life who are helping us in these times. So early on we began reaching out to folks who had left the Army, retired, and maybe they had entered professions that are of great demand right now, and we began bringing them back in as volunteers. Many contacted us, and so far we've onboarded several hundred in the medical field. We have folks in logistics that we understand are interested in coming back to, and so we're working in that domain to identify requirements and identify ways to bring folks back in. If you've got an interest in any of that, go check out the Human Resources Command's homepage. There's a good place there where there's a survey where you can enter your interests and see if there's not an opportunity to serve again. We certainly appreciate the service of those soldiers for life, and they're making a difference across America. In the world of stability, as you know, the Department of Defense put a stop-move order in place around March 25th. That's being continually reevaluated. We look at that in sort of 15-day increments. It's due to stay in effect till 30 June. And so that's governing movement in and around posts as well as movement between posts for anybody that's on orders or whose travel is being paid for by the U.S. government. If we have an update on that, of course, we'll provide that information very quickly. But the Army has done a terrific job of adapting. It is an extremely adaptive organization, and that is primarily because of the people that populate our Army. They are very flexible, nimble folks, and they've served their country very well in this very interesting time we're living in. So those are the first things I'd like to share.
All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. Very insightful. I think adapt is the theme word for the Army during this whole thing. We've been able to do some incredible things up here at the headquarters level to help our soldiers, families, and our civilians, which is why Mr. Peter Hosutt is here from CHARA, the Civilian Human Resources Agency. Peter, what can you tell us about innovations and adaptations that we've made on the civilian side of the house? What are some great news stories you have for us?
Well, first of all, I'd like to open by saying it's just a real pleasure to be here with Hank and, of course, Dr. Wardynski and Sergeant Major Clarke. This is an opportunity that I really haven't had before, so this is a lot of fun already. So when you're an Army civilian, I can tell you, you never have to worry about why you're here. You know, we directly support everything for the warfighter, for the families of our warfighters, and of course the greater Army mission every single day. So as we got ourselves to about the middle of March and we saw people being sent home to telework and those kind of things impacting our workplace, we realized that we needed to, picking up on the theme of flexible, adaptable, and agile, add a few additional words to that thought there. We realized that we had to come up with new and innovative ways to find Army civilians to help us support the warfighter, the Army, and our worldwide mission. So fundamentally, some of the first things we did was basically learn how to do our work in a virtual environment. So we learned how to collaborate on a virtual environment, maximizing our telework tools. We also learned how to bring people to work. Believe it or not, despite all the challenges in front of us, we have brought over 3,800 new Army civilians to work during this COVID period, since about the middle of March. We've had almost 500 of those that we've onboarded going directly to medical positions. So we think that what we've seen on the civilian side is a lot of flexibility, a lot of adaptability, and a lot of innovation to make sure that the hiring continued. We did a lot of outreach to folks who may have joined our workforce, had a medical degree, and maybe went into a different career path. So we solicited, did a data dive and discovered a whole bunch of folks that had those kind of skills, and we've been reaching out to them to see if they'd like to join our medical mission. So some innovation, some creativity, some maximizing IT are many of the tools that we've used to make sure that the mission continues. So I look forward to continued questions and continued dialogue. It's just a great time to be an Army civilian. So Hank, back to you.
Thank you, Peter. And I would concur with that, being one of those Army civilians. And I'm fascinated to learn about some things that we're doing for the rest of those 300,000 of us that are out there. Next up, Sergeant Major Mark Clarke from the G-1's Directorate of Military Personnel Management. Sergeant Major, we've talked many times, in previous interviews about many innovations that your shop has put into play to take care of soldiers, because things like promotions and professional military education, and as Secretary Wardynski mentioned, being able to stay in, because maybe you had a job lined up and you're getting ready to ETS, and because of COVID-19 that job went away. Now what do? Hey, the Army's always going to take care of you. So Sergeant Major, take it away.
Thank you, Hank. First, thanks Dr. Wardynski and Mr. Hosutt for allowing me to be on the panel with you today. And good afternoon to our fellow soldiers, civilians, and our family members. First, I want to thank you for taking this time to join us this afternoon so that we can discuss your concerns on the COVID-19 has on your family. Like many of you, I am a soldier. I work closely with the civilian workforce, and my significant other, she also wears a uniform, and today my son actually shipped to basic training, so I am also a family member.
Cool.
I'd like to take this opportunity to express to you how hard we are working to provide policies that mitigate the risk and concerns created from the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, we are professionally and personally invested to make sure that we get this right. I know many of you and your families have concerns and questions that impact your ability to continue to serve. And I will tell you, we have provided additional options for soldiers who are rapidly approaching their ETS dates. Right now, there are at least 9,000 soldiers within 6 months of their ETS date who will benefit from this opportunity to commit to a short-term enlistment and be able to continue to serve. In addition, we wanted to create opportunities to ensure that we did not delay promotions for well-deserving soldiers. So we've implemented policies that have allowed soldiers to be promoted. Just on 1 May of 2020, we promoted 3,800 soldiers to the rank of staff sergeant due to the benefits of this policy. In addition, we want to make sure that we have policies in place that also protect the leave that soldiers have earned and are looking forward to taking because it is well-deserved. And in addition, the complications of the permanent change of station. We understand that this pandemic has put a lot of hardship on soldiers and their families, so we've implemented some policies to help mitigate those concerns that you may have with PCSing. So as we continue to develop several of these policies to help reduce these hardships against COVID-19 in order to protect our soldiers and to preserve readiness, I look forward to answering your questions and easing your concerns as we take on this pandemic as an Army family. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Major, and I'll take that opportunity just to remind folks, submit your questions in the comments below. We've got folks behind the scenes who are able to answer those in writing to you as the show progresses. And what I have here are questions that we have collected over the last couple of weeks through our social listening program. We actually look at every single post that's out there and see what are some of the common questions that are still being asked so that we can get them some answers during our program today. So, gentlemen, I'd like to start with Dr. W. This is a recruiting question, and it deals with medical waivers. So a lot of folks who are looking to join the Army, they're wanting to know, hey, I tried to join before, I was denied a waiver because of COVID-19. Is the Army maybe taking more waivers, or what should I do to apply for the Army during COVID-19? Thoughts on that, sir?
Sure. Just broadly to begin with, the Army is open for business. We are a going concern, and we are actually on a path to continue to grow. We will grow this year again, and we expect to grow next year. And to do that, we need the service of Americans in all sorts of fields. And while some Americans may have been afflicted by COVID-19, our interest is bringing folks in who have the capacity to serve. So if you have had an episode of COVID-19 and you enter the recruiting world and you go for medical screening, what you might hear is we'd like to do some more screening. But having the disease does not preclude you from service. It just may bring about a bit more screening of your records, talk between military medical folks and your medical folks, and that sort of folks, just sort of to protect you. We want to make sure that people that enter the Army have the capacity to serve. It is an outdoor sport. It is a somewhat physical enterprise, and we don't want to expose people who may not have completed their healing or who may have some sort of a persistent condition from entering and then having a problem. We want to protect our folks who are already in, and we want to protect folks who want to join us. So please pursue that. Talk to a recruiter. If you run into a roadblock, visit goarmy.com and continue to ask questions until you get an answer that seems reasonable. But we are in flux here in the Army, so the word may not have reached everybody exactly on, waiver requirements and how the disease impacts joining the Army. And so ask good questions, and if you run into a problem, you can always reach out to Department of the Army as well. We're available to help folks find a spot for themselves in the great United States Army.
Absolutely. Sir, next question goes back to what you were talking about in bringing some of these great Americans back onto the active roles. They had specialties that we need right now. They may have only been out of uniform for a few months or maybe a couple of years, but they are still practicing in that field, and we've invited them to come back. You talked about hundreds that are on the rolls now. One question that I keep coming up, and I don't know, it's these logisticians. They're always wanting to come back on active duty. That seems to be the big population of folks that continually engage us on social media. I was a logistician. I recently retired. I know you're taking medical people back, but when are you going to bring the logisticians back on the rolls?
Sure. So it's a great question, and it really speaks to things that have been going on in the Army and things the Army has been doing. You know, if you have seen our recent items on YouTube, I guess you could call them commercials, Unbelievable and Brave.
Yes.
They speak to the unexpected ways in which soldiers are serving, establishing a hospital in Javits Convention Center in New York City, establishing temporary hospitals around the country, moving protective equipment to the site of need. So we have all kinds of things we're looking at in the Army in case the need arises, and logistics is up the list. So obviously medicine was first, and we brought in 100 folks in the medical field to help out around the country. You can envision situations, so can we, in which we might need to bring a good number of logistics folks back. We are looking at that right now. And a good way to keep track of what our needs are is to go to the Human Resources Command homepage. And on there's a little survey tool where you can kind of exhibit your interest and communicate with the Army about your desire to return, how you might help us in the current situation to help the country. And then we can stay in touch about opportunities that may evolve.
All right, thank you, sir. Peter, I'd like to jump over to you now. And as we talk about recalling soldiers who have been retired for some time or separated from some time, is there something similar on the civilian side of the house? Is there such a thing as bringing a retired civilian back or someone who has recently left civil service and wants to come back to help out during COVID-19?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is absolutely yes. Yeah, it's a name, the program is a name that even I can remember. So if you have an annuitant who has retired, we can reemploy annuitants. So across the Army today, you will find reemployed annuitants in any number of positions. Traditionally, a reemployed annuitant was, the program was designed to bring folks back who could help train or mentor or otherwise develop emerging leaders, but also to do special projects, help fill gaps. What we've seen over the years, especially more recently, is often commands will bring back some reemployed annuitants into some key leader positions. I know my own organization has taken advantage of bringing back some really strong leaders into several of our positions where we otherwise had some gaps or wanted to bring some folks back and let them grow some more. So in terms of how to bring back a reemployed annuitant or how to come back as a reemployed annuitant, I think the most important thing anyone who's interested can do is, reach out to their former employers, their own their own network of civilians. When we realized we had gaps within my organization, we started picking up the phone and cold calling. So reemployed annuitants are reemployed annuitants. There we go. Are a great way to bring back some excellent talent for the short and even the longer term.
And see, that goes on my top 10 things I did not know about being a retired civilian list,
There
right?
you go.
That would be one of them, that you can actually come back, that it's not really that much different than someone in uniform who's retired who wants to come back under certain circumstances.
Correct.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about the hiring process. You mentioned earlier the Army's still hiring Department of the Army civilians. We've onboarded about 3,800 of them. Can you get a little more detail? How does that work? Are we still using USA Jobs? What's the mechanism for that to happen? If I'm just a highly qualified person with no federal service experience and I'd like to join the Army team because I think I have value added, how do I do that?
What the amazing thing about how we have emerged as the way we do HR in the federal government over my career is that we have today the technology, the tools that allow us to reach out to people virtually. So as we got ready to tackle COVID and learned about how we would do things differently, one of the key things that did not change was that we could still Managers can still initiate recruitment actions. That's all electronic. Managers can still connect with their CPAC, their advisor, their Civilian Human Resources advisor. They can still reach out and talk to them about the recruitment strategy and those kind of things. And of course, jobs are posted the same way they always have been. USA Jobs. We can still get candidates. We can still evaluate those candidates, issue electronic referral lists to managers. And so much of our success in bringing on those 3,800 people has been exactly that. The key change that we've seen is when it came time to in-process people. So traditionally, that has been in an office where the new hire, the new Army employee, would arrive at a civilian personnel advisory center, walk in, meet the folks who will be working with them, and then meeting a whole bunch of additional new hires, and we'd all be in the same room. So what we learned and that we had to do very, very quickly was adjust that practice. So we've begun to virtually in-process new hires. And as I stand here today, we've still got a lot of learning to do, a lot of things to figure out, but we're very excited about the fact that 82% of our new hires during this COVID period have been hired virtually. No direct interaction. On the medical side, 88% of those folks have been hired virtually. So we feel like that's a real success story and ensuring the safety of not just the applicant as they walk into a new office, into a new building, but also our HR practitioners. So I think the significant change that you would notice if you had visited one of our offices in January and then today is that virtual in-processing is the place where we've really changed our habits.
That's fascinating to me. And there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of Facebook groups out there that are set up to help people who are applying for federal service. And I think you just answered the majority of their questions. Hopefully they're tuning in. But that's great information. Thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
Sergeant Major, over to you. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the retention side of things, because all year long, even from last year's fiscal year, your shop has just been knocking it out of the park. We've hit records we've never seen before. And even with COVID-19 going on, we're still shattering records. Can you tell me about the new retention policy that we put into place to help soldiers, like we talked about before, that may have had something lined up and now they want a chance to re-enlist, and it might be a shorter window than what we would have allowed previously?
All right, sure, Hank. So what we've come to realize is that the impacts of COVID-19 have definitely changed the plans that soldiers who were planning to separate from the Army, the jobs that they were planning to walk into may or may not be available now. And that's a very unfortunate situation for our young soldiers, but this is one of the reasons why I love this job so much, because we are in a position to help those soldiers through policy and guidance when they are in tough situations like that. So what we've done is we've given two options to soldiers who are in that situation. One is called ARCO. It's the Response to COVID-19 Outbreak Extensions. This allows a soldier who is within 6 months of their ETS date to extend for as little as 3 months or as long as 11 months, as long as they are otherwise fully qualified. Or if they are a soldier who was ETSing in fiscal year 20 and they're ETSing because they signed a declination to continue service statement, these soldiers now also have the opportunity to extend or re-enlist because the Army is still hiring and we are looking to maintain and keep those quality soldiers in our ranks.
Excellent answer. So the best person to talk to is your unit retention NCO, I would imagine. They have all the answers for you, and I'm sure you got to get commander's approval and all of that normal stuff that's in there, but it's just the window, your ETS window or your re-enlistment window has now broadened a little bit to help you out in that situation.
Yeah, so if soldiers have questions or concerns about which options apply to them, the best person to talk to is their career counselor within their organizations.
Makes sense. You mentioned something earlier during your opening remarks, Sergeant Major. I'd like to kind of get some more details on that. The special leave accrual, that falls under you guys. You're in a use or lose situation. Nobody's taking leave right now. What happens if I'm going over 120 days?
So as a result of the stop movement order, a lot of soldiers are unable to take leave as they so desire without leaving their local areas. So what DOD has authorized is for soldiers to exceed 60 days of leave, not to exceed 120 days of leave, and this will carry over until fiscal year 2023. So this gives soldiers time spaced out in order to take the leave that they've earned and are deserving of throughout a period based on what the op tempo or their personal situations may be within their organizations.
All right, Sergeant Major, thank you. Dr. Wardynski, if I could go back to you for just a second, sir. I know you mentioned during your opening comments sort of an update on the stop move order that the SecDef signed in back in April, but do you have any specific updates to that or any new information? I know we're still reviewing every 15 days, but for those just tuning in who may have
Sure.
not heard you, what can you tell us?
Well, just to sort of quickly recap the stop move order, it was put in place in March 25th. And it governs the movement of folks in and around their local installation, between installations from the United States to abroad, and of course from abroad to the United States. And it pertains to individuals who are moving on orders or on travel that's funded by the U.S. government. So that's the folks who it applies to. It is due to expire on June 30th. Of course, it could be extended based on circumstances. Those circumstances may be locally determined, so we may have local variations on that policy yet to be determined. We review it continuously based on the current situation, and currently it is in effect. And we are still looking at a June 30th date as it'll continue until then, and then obviously if we reevaluate and determine we need to extend it or extend it in certain locations, then we would, to provide for the safety of the force, our families, our civilians, our military folks. So mindful of that can cause some real difficulties for families, for soldiers. The Army's put in place a couple of financial measures to help out. One takes advantage of a hardship pay that had existed, and it's called, we've named it the restriction of movement pay. And it provides funds for people who are precluded from moving. Maybe they're in a PCS situation, and now they're sort of, without their property, without a place to stay. And so this financial provision, it allows us to pay about $100 a day to help folks through that situation. There's another one that's in place called isolation pay. That's really for folks who may have arrived at a new location, and as you move, maybe folks have moved because they're going to training. And they arrive at the training station, and then we're going to ask them to isolate for a period of days. During that period of isolation, these funds, which are based on local per diem rates, are available to help defray the cost of that. So a great many things going on in the G4 world with regard to PCS moves and transportation, trying to make that an easier process, adjustments to things like DITY moves to make that easier and pay at a better rate to soldiers and their families are ongoing. But where we can find policy tools to help our families through this situation, our soldiers through this situation, we're trying to put those into effect because we do expect it to stay with us a bit longer, at least through June. And then it could be locally determined after that if it'll be extended, or it might be extended across the entire Army based on circumstances.
No, that makes sense, sir. Okay. Sergeant Major, back to you. Got a lot of Sergeant Major questions here. Let's talk a little bit about promotions. You mentioned that in your opening comments. You and I have done some interviews in the interim talking about some probably never thought of before ways to give soldiers that opportunity to be promoted during COVID-19. You want to hit on that?
Absolutely. So during the onset of the stop movement order previously mentioned by Dr. Wardynski, we put out provisions to allow commanders who have semi-centralized promotion authority to have options in order to mitigate the risk associated with conducting a monthly unit promotion board. So commanders now have the ability to conduct a virtual promotion board if they need to, or that commander can designate the command sergeant major of that organization to identify those soldiers who are deserving of being integrated onto the promotion recommended list by his or her personal interaction or by recommendations with the chain of command. In addition to that, we did a temporary suspension on our Select, Train, Educate, Promote policy, also known as STEP. This allows soldiers to be promoted to Staff Sergeant and Sergeant First Class without completing their required PME, Advanced Leader course, or the Senior Leaders course. These soldiers will still be required to complete their training later on once the training pipelines open back up again. If they fail to complete the training by the time they're in the primary zone for the next higher grade, those soldiers' service can be at risk by having a headquarters DA bar imposed on them. In addition to that, soldiers who need to attend BLC, Basic Leadership Course, or the Master Leaders Course, virtual options have been offered to those soldiers as well so that they can complete their PME in order to be promoted. Now, I also get quite a few questions about the deployment exception to policies. So the deployment exception to policies are still in place for those being promoted to sergeant or to master sergeant. For those who are being promoted to staff sergeant or sergeant first class, the suspension of step is in place for them. We expect the suspension of step to be in place as of now until 30 September, but every 30 days we will review it to see if we need to extend it or if we need to shorten it.
All right, Sergeant Major, thank you. Peter, I'd like to just sort of get your take on this. We're talking about professional development for the uniformed members, maybe courses that they need to take in order to make the next rank, or things they need to, well, yeah, administrative things they need to do to advance in rank. How about on the civilian side? You've got people that are going from, GS9 to 11. There are certain courses that we need to take. Is this being offered virtually, or what are you guys doing to set that up?
Yep. So across the career programs, what we've seen is that there's a lot of effort to try to facilitate online training for our civilians. And so I would start with some of our programs that are across the enterprise. So the Civilian Education System, CES, we see a lot of exploration in those areas to make it to get it virtual, get it online so that folks can participate. And by the way, I would point out that for CES, they've been exploring a lot of that for a number of years. So some of the courses were already online, and many of those courses had an online component. But as we look at the broader career programs, we realize that this is going to be with us for a while. We're talking about this maybe happening again as winter comes back. So what do we need to do for the long run? So a lot of the career programs are making those investments in developing online curriculum. They're making those investments in the IT to support it. For example, in my own career program, I've been very impressed by the progress our training team has made using Teams. So Microsoft Teams, that's an Army tool that is now available, or it's a Microsoft tool that is now the Army is using, kind of enterprise-wide. And we have really leveraged that for our online training for our Civilian Human Resources training program. So we're confident that across the civilian cadre, there will be a lot of opportunities like that across all of the career programs.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for that. Excellent. Next to last question, I think I'd like to split this, Dr. Wardynski, if it's okay with you, and Sergeant Major with you, talking about exceptions to policy during PCS season. Hardship exceptions to policy, how does that work? Sergeant Major, could we start with you, and we'll have you fill in?
All right, so for exceptions to policies that are pertaining to the PCS timeframe, so during the soldiers who were scheduled to PCS between March and July timeframe, their PCSs were put on hold. And so as we begin to uncoil the Army and certain soldiers are being able to PCS, a lot of this will take place during the summer, which is our normal summer surge time where we have a lot of high PCSs. So those soldiers will typically have on their orders a provision that would allow them to report between 30 days early or 20 days after their report date. Because we know that there may be possible logistic constraints associated with a high number of individuals PCSing during the summer, those soldiers have the ability to request a deferment going through their S1 or their MPD to have their report dates adjusted.
Sir, anything to dovetail on that?
Yeah, just a bit of general philosophy, which our goal throughout this is protect our families, our soldiers, our civilians, and help them through this situation as we help America through this situation. And so in many cases, we've put in exception to policies as a matter of course to help folks in these unusual times. And those pertain to things such as the PT test, the attendance at courses, promotion, and so forth. So I would suggest that the best channel to bring the need to bear would be the chain of command. Commanders have been very, very responsive to their unit's needs, their soldiers' needs, family needs. They know those needs best. They're on the ground locally. And they've brought those to the attention of the Department of the Army where necessary. And then I would say we're turning around exceptions to policy in a matter of a day or two up here, which is very fast for the Pentagon. And Department of Defense has been doing just the same. Things are going into the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of Defense very, very quickly. and they are the the incubators of this desire to meet the needs of the moment and to make sure our families and our soldiers aren't, displaced and have an unusual, sort of hardship placed upon them because of the circumstances, so that they can continue to serve and that we don't have undue burdens. So that would be the Department of the Army's approach. Would be, if you have a need, make sure you let your chain of command know. Don't suffer in silence. If you've got a problem, raise it up. It could be a medical issue, it could be a PCS issue, a transportation issue, and we may not have thought of it yet, but if it comes to our attention, we're going to address it very quickly.
All right, sir, thank you. Well, you answered both questions at the end there, Sergeant Major, so that was the last question. What I'd like to do is just sort of open it up to each of the three of you to add anything else that you think that we need to let the folks out there know about that we haven't already covered. Sergeant Major, we'll start with you. That way, by the time we get to Secretary Wardynski, he can close us out.
Thank you. First, again, I would like to thank you for taking the time to join us today. I hope that we were able to answer a lot of your questions and concerns that you're having, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that we are taking care of you, your family, and our civilian workforce in the Army. This is a true testament to our belief that people are first and that winning matters.
Peter?
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for this opportunity to connect with you today through this forum. It's been great to stand up here with the two of you to present all this. I would offer the same kind of feedback. Everyone, please be safe. Err on the side of caution. When you have civilian-related concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to your Civilian Personnel Advisory Center. They're there to support you. We have all kinds of ways of connecting. Email, also telephone still remains alive and well, and we are making sure that we're available for our service population. I do want to emphasize that on the civilian side, we do have a little bit of flexibility. So we have a lot of civilians who are still in a movement mode, and they're not quite sure when they may actually PCS or get to their new duty station. One of the things that we're leveraging and that the CHARA, the Civilian Human Resources Agency family, is facilitating is the potential to possibly join your new organization virtually for a little while. I liked the word, sir, Sergeant Major, you said about uncoiling. As we start to uncoil, and perhaps some of the civilian positions may take a backseat to some of the military that need to move first. And I don't know that that's going to happen, but something we've been thinking about on the civilian HR side. Start to talk about what's the potential to join your new organization virtually, and let CHARA facilitate some of that for you, and just know that we know how to do this so that it doesn't impact your travel and entitlements. Continue to reach out to everyone in CHARA and your HR family, and I would be remiss if I didn't say how great it has been to work with ASA, MNRA, and G-1 in responding to fast tracking policies and guidance in response to COVID. Most important thing, stay well. Sir?
Thank you. Sort of to bring it to a close, but also with an eye to the future. Army's been a little bit busy with this Cova situation here, but it's also been looking to the future at the same time. A great many things, work here at Department of the Army over long time frames. Those are budgeting things, programming things, and the most important things, of course, are the things that pertain to people. And the Chief of Staff signaled all that last year at AUSA with his approach. People first, right? And it is still people first and will be people first. And so the people programs we were talking about AUSA, they're still moving forward. So talent management is moving forward. We're bringing online more capability for this upcoming market that will take place for the Officer Corps in the coming months. We consolidated a couple markets together so we'd have more people to put in them, because the stop move had kind of limited our ability to move people around, so we didn't want to disadvantage those folks. So that's moving forward. On the civilian side, I've signed out with General Siemens, the G-1 of the Army, the civilian implementing plan to the Army People Strategy. So the Chief and the Secretary signed the People Strategy in October timeframe, I think the 11th. This past week, General Siemens and I signed out the implementing plan, and that plan contains the steps to implement the things we were talking about at AUSA. And almost immediately here, we are aligning career programs in ways to provide people ladders as far as they would like to go. So while some careers may have some cul-de-sacs on the way up and not afford room all the way to senior SES level, we're creating pathways into new career programs that make sense for folks. So allied fields in medicine, allied fields in engineering, where you could move out of civil and perhaps into another sort of engineering to move up. Those are coming online very, very quickly. There'll be a policy memo coming out of those shortly. So the things we had talked about doing long-term and midterm are still underway. They have not been put on hold. The Army continues to move forward. It rolls along, and it will address the current challenges, and it'll address future challenges. And thanks to its terrific people, it'll do that in great form. And so the Army and the leadership here is very grateful to our soldiers and families and our civilians. And again, if you've got local circumstances, challenges that you're addressing, please bring them to the Army's attention. We have folks in isolation in some places. They may have just gotten there. They may be lonely, no one to turn to. Don't go it alone. The Army's got resources for you. Folks that are struggling with PCS move, don't go it alone. Turn to your chain of command and raise things up to get help. The Army is a team. You're not in it alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being here today. And before we close out, just want to say thank you to the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs for the use of their Facebook page, Army Facebook and Army YouTube, and also to Army Television for bringing their technicians in to help make this broadcast possible today. For all of us here at the ASA, MNRA, and Army G1, I'm Hank Minitrez. Thanks for watching.